Welcome to the show. Steve Stevens is my guest today. He's a Grammy Award-winning guitar player, writer, composer. This guy's worked with everybody. Michael Jackson, Vince Neil, Robert Palmer, Sebastian Bach, so many others. Plus, of course, he did the iconic Top Gun theme song. That's the one he won the Grammy for. And, of course, he's most known for being the guitar player with Billy Idol. But for me, I really became a fan when I bought that first Vince Neil record, Exposed. I love that record. I was just a kid. I was like 14 years old. And just the songs and the guitars, I thought it all sounded so cool. And of course, I knew the Billy Idol stuff too, but that's what really made me a fan. And so it's a bit surreal to sit down and chat with him and have the time to basically ask him all the different things. And we're going to talk about, his background, his life story. You'll hear about his whole career. He's got a new website, stevestevensguitar.com. So check that out. He's on Cameo, doing cameos. He's on Twitter. He's doing a rock and roll fantasy camp. He does charity work with Save Our Stages, Music Cares, the veterans. He's got a lot of stuff in the works too. A new record with Billy Idol, a new solo record. Deadland Ritual and Kings of Chaos is still happening. The list goes on. We got a lot of fun stories in this one, so enjoy it. Check it out. Thank you for doing this. Welcome, Steve Stevens, to the show. Guitarist extraordinaire. How you doing?
I'm good, man. My wife and I, we've been locked away since March, and we took advantage of last 2 days. We got actually out to the beach, which was
oh
yeah.
And you're in California now. You're from Brooklyn and New York, but you're in California now, right?
Yeah. About 25 years I've lived here.
Which part are you, like by Huntington Beach or Malibu, or which? I don't know the area too well.
Yeah, we went out to Malibu. We live in West Hollywood, but I went out to Malibu.
Okay. Is the traffic better at least now with this whole pandemic and stuff?
Today. That's why I missed the first schedule. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Traffic was great around, April, May. It was unbelievable.
Okay.
But it's back to, especially on Friday, it's back to, what it was.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, if we can just want to tell your story. It's a pretty amazing story. Starts out and you were raised in born in Brooklyn, raised in Queens, and started playing the guitar at age 7. Started with an acoustic, then got an electric. So how many hours, when you're a kid? I mean, seems so young. I remember my parents made me take piano lessons and practice, and I'd always put up a fight. How many hours a day were you practicing at such a young age?
Well, at first you're so young, you're not really practicing. The guitar came into the house as my dad picked up. I believe he paid $17 for a guitar package at the department store, and it came with a music book. But my dad, he was blue collar, hardworking guy, and by the time he'd get home and have dinner, he didn't have time or patience for a guitar. So, I brought it into my room. And I was just banging away, making a hell of a racket on it. But I have an older brother, 5 years older than me, and a lot of his friends played guitar. And they said to my parents, it's making a hell of a noise, but it's in time. He's got rhythm.
Yeah.
And so they arranged for my first guitar teacher, which was a woman named Sunny Oakes. Her brother is Phil Oakes, who was a protest singer in the 60s. So she was, because the regular music teachers wouldn't take me that young.
Because too young. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So she was cool about it, and I think I stuck with her for about half a year, and then found a proper guitar teacher. But it was one of those things I loved. I think I initially wanted to do it because I just wanted to hang out with my brother and his friends.
Oh.
And I thought that was a way to do it, by playing guitar.
Okay.
And it worked.
Yeah.
It actually worked.
Okay. Yeah. Usually it's to get girls, but hanging out with your brother, I guess that works. You're probably too young to discover girls yet.
Well, the girls would say to my brother, I'd want to go along, tag along. Actually, my brother brought me to my first concert. It was the James Gang in Central Park. But the girls would say, "Oh, bring your brother along. He's so cute." They didn't know I was a devious little bastard. And my brother would be like, "You have no idea what he's really like." He'd be like, "Oh, but he's really cute." And my brother would be like, "Sure he is."
Sure. Yeah. Right. So,
but yeah.
Yeah. So was it the second guitar teacher that you had that, it was actually like your choir teacher, but taught you guitar. This was some advice that I heard that he gave you that was amazing. That he told you, don't have a fallback plan because you're good enough that I think you can make it. And if you have a fallback plan, the first sign of disappointment, you're going to bail. So he said, just put all your energy into this guitar thing.
Yeah, which was incredible and brave of him to tell me.
Yeah.
What he also told me is he started a family when he was very young. He was my choir teacher in junior high, but he played guitar and he was a very charismatic guy. And of course, my mom wanted me to take lessons with him because he looked kind of like Joe Namath, you know. So, but he gave me some good life lessons, you know, and he said, give it your best shot because he was really great, but, you know, he started a family very young, had 2 kids and had, you know, mortgage and all this stuff. And he said, I guess he recognized that I had the potential to make a career out of it. And he said, give it your best and don't worry about having something to fall back on. You know, if you really want it, you'll get the success.
Yeah, and that's pretty ballsy. So, but then you did end up going to the a high school for the performing arts, the Fame School in Manhattan, and you got in on a guitar audition, but then there was no guitars to play, and so you tried the viola, but you're like, this isn't. I want to do guitar, so you ended up just dropping out of high school, right?
Yeah, they admitted me in on guitar, and my teacher was the one that coached me in, and I actually got accepted in playing. I was a huge Yes fan, and Steve Howe on the Fragile record had "Mood for a Day," and I played that piece as an audition piece. And my guitar teacher wrote it out in musical form. So they thought I was reading it, but I really was never much of a reader. So I just kind of looked at it, fooled them. But I got into the school, and they said, guitar is not a symphonic instrument, meaning there's no guitar in the orchestra.
Sure.
You have to pick up an orchestral instrument, and I was really horrible at viola. So I kind of lost interest, although I loved music history. And my music history classes were amazing because I loved reading about the early classical musicians who were pretty rock and roll. Those guys were pretty, they were the rock stars of the day. And so I loved all that aspect of it. And I liked learning music theory. I always felt that was something that was important. But then there was a hip, there's always that hip kid in school, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the hip kid, we stayed in Manhattan. I lived in the suburbs in Queens, and I stayed in Manhattan, and he took me to the Mercer Art Center. We hung out in the city, and we went to see the Heartbreakers, which was Johnny Thunder's band after the New York Dolls. And it was the first time I had been in the clubs and really seen, yes, struggling musicians, but there was probably about 4 bands on the bill that night. And I saw my future as that was my education as opposed to what I was learning in school.
Sure.
And by then I just joined a cover band that was playing. We started to play the Long Island cover band scene with like Twisted Sister and all that. So, we'd finish a gig, I'd get home, and I'd literally travel home on the subway and get home at about 3 a.m. and, have to, be in school by 8, and it was like an hour of train ride. I was exhausted. So I really wasn't a very good student. And so I dropped out and got my GED, which I promised my folks. And from that point on, I was living with my other band members and playing the clubs about 3 or 4 nights a week.
Yeah, and so this sounds like a Seinfeld episode or something, but I think it must have been around this time that you worked for a bra company. Like you said that if you didn't make it in music, you would have worked your way up the corporate ladder there. So tell me about that job. Like, I just can't even picture that. Like, did you have the big hair and you go in with a tie or what?
No, this is when I was 14. I worked.
Oh, that was that young. Okay, wow.
Yeah. Because I was always in bands. And there was you could look in the village. Our local paper was the Village Voice, which was free, and there was about 3 or 4 pages of ads for musicians looking for other musicians. So I would go around and also word of mouth, So I was in a little a little band, a little garage band. I'd probably been in about 4 garage bands. And over the summer, the drummer's dad was the owner of Teen Form Bras. And I don't know if they're still in existence.
So weird.
And they were little training bras. And so I worked at Teen Form. And actually, I got fired because I was there. I wasn't there legally, but I went out and I smoked a joint during my lunch break. And I went out and I was talking to the foreman, and I put my hand down, didn't realize it was the conveyor belt. And I got my hand pulled into the conveyor belt, took the skin all off my hand. Had to go to the hospital, and to this day, I won't work with saws and things like that.
Yeah, because your hands as a guitar player, that's scary.
It was very scary. I mean, it looked like hell, and he said, they couldn't get insurance. He said, "You're fired," basically.
Wow. Yeah. That was for the best. Yeah. Job. It worked out okay. So at what point did you change your name? Because Steve Stevens is not your real name. So what point did you change your name to Steve Stevens? And how'd you come up with that? Because I feel like that was kind of like a thing in the 80s. There's like Duran Duran, Mr. the Go-Go's, Talk, like all these repeated names.
It's actually a great story because
cool.
My family's came over during the Second World War, and when my dad's family landed at Ellis Island, they gave them a German name because they couldn't understand where it was, and they were Russian immigrants, but they said it sounded like Schneider, which in German is a tailor. If you go get your pants hemmed or whatever,
I didn't know that.
It's tailor. And then I'm like, well, I can't call myself Steve Taylor because there's Steve Tyler, and so. Yeah. The band that I was in before Billy Idol, we had a loft in the music building, and lots of musicians would come and hang out, and we're sitting there and we're having this discussion. We're getting ready to play gigs. What's my name going to be? And Sylvain from the New York Dolls was hanging out with us. They used to rehearse. His band used to rehearse in our loft. And he said, he looked at me and he said, "Just do what I did. Use your first name twice." So I thought, I'm christened by a New York doll,
That's pretty cool.
And he remembered it because I hadn't seen him in years. And we played a show with Billy about 6 years ago. I had told my wife this story. And 6 years ago, we played a show with the newly reformed Dolls. And I saw Sylvain and I said, "Do you remember giving my name?" And he said, "Absolutely." So there it is,
Yeah. So that band, was it, how do you say is it Maribus or Maribus or?
Fine Malibus.
Malibus. I must have made a typo there. But so that band, you guys had a record company, the record got shelved, but you ended up hooking up with Bill Aucoin, who had been the manager in Kiss. And so that's kind of how you got hooked up with Billy Idol, right? You put out an ad and he answered it and said, "Hey, have you ever heard of Billy Idol?" And you had heard of him.
Well, we did the album, and we were like 15 guys, a lot of guys they were Army brats from Clarksville, Tennessee. And we were living in this loft, barely with a kitchen and just a little pipe for a shower. We were pretty broke,
Yeah.
But when you're doing it, you don't even realize it because everybody was broke. And then we got signed to Island Records, and the producer was Jimmy Miller, who did the Rolling Stones records. And they shipped us off to the Bahamas, Compass Point Studios.
Nice.
And we stayed in the house that the Rolling Stones owned. And we thought we got it made. The thing we forgot about is we didn't have the songs. So the record, we were all good musicians, but we really didn't have a cohesive, identifiable sound. And I didn't know anything about writing songs really then. So the record was not released, and we hooked up with Bill Aucoin, and the decision was made that I couldn't go any longer. I needed musicians I could learn from. As far as I needed writers and other musicians that could kind of challenge me.
Right.
So I think we ran an ad. Aucoin ran an ad for like one issue of the Village Voice again, and I said guitarist looking to form a band. And about a week later, Bill Aucoin called me and said, "Do you know who Billy Idol is?" And by then, Dancing with Myself had been released. And he said, well, I said, oh, Dancing with Myself. He said, yeah, well, actually, Billy's moved to New York. He's looking to put a band together. He's going to, he's living there in New York, and you guys should meet.
And that was okay. And that was it. Yeah. And so, but this was interesting. You had a good quote there. You said that it was that this is what you had that you didn't have in your previous band was a direction and someone that you could bounce ideas off and someone who could challenge you, right? Because if it was a guitar solo was too long or whatever, like he would tell you things. So, I mean, do you think that's got to be an important thing to have in this business, is not only being able to take criticism, but also being able to give it in kind of a nice way? And you guys have that back and forth, right?
Yeah, I mean, the fact was that I didn't have to, I didn't have to form a band with 4 guys and figure out what our identity was and what our sound was. And Billy Idol already knew what he wanted to do. That's why he left Generation X. He wanted to do this gumbo of punk rock and classic rock, and his producer Keith Forsey came from the dance school side of things, with things like he played drums on Donna Summer's records, and had this dance background, and it seemed like I was the right fit for it, because whatever they needed stylistically on guitar, whether it was acoustic or textural or straight up aggressive rock and roll, I had the capability to do that. And I said to Billy, I said, look, I'm not a punk rock guitar player. I said, but wouldn't it be better to have somebody who you can hone their ideas, and maybe if they play 100 of them, you pick the best 20, rather than having somebody you constantly have to push,
right,
who's only going to give you what you ask for. And I think that served us well. And I think that's why we still work together.
Yeah. So that first album, Billy Idol, you had the White Wedding song. That was the first time you heard your song played on the radio, right? But it's funny because and you even had the MTV video and everything, but you're only making $250 a week from that first record, and you're touring in a van and stuff. So it's like, people don't really realize like how long it takes to really make it.
Yeah, I was on salary from, I think I saved my first salary check, $250. And I didn't actually own a good recording guitar when I met Billy. And I remember he took me to 48th Street and got me my first real Les Paul. And it was, recording the first record, I think, and I tell this to musicians all the time, that it's really okay to ask questions, and it's really okay to say that you don't know if something is suggested, or because people can always show you an example of what they're looking for, especially with music.
Yeah.
If they're saying, "Oh, we're looking," I remember there was a couple of things. I mean, as far as the rock and roll guitar stuff, I could handle all that. But there was a couple of things where they would ask for maybe like a Steve Cropper bluesy Strat kind of clean thing, and that was not my wheelhouse. But I would just say, play me what it is play me a record, and I would be like, oh, I know what that is. So, and I tell musicians, all the time now, it's okay to ask questions, and that's how you learn.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, because just because you sign a big deal, you still don't know a lot of things, and you're probably still learning things as you go along, right?
It's man, it's not about what you know; it's about making the mistakes and learning what not to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is cool too. In the second album, The Rebel Yell, you wrote the music for Eyes Without a Face, but Billy wrote the lyrics. But you had to kind of convince him to do a ballad. He was hesitant to do that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was a strange amalgam, because we were in rehearsal for that record. We were rehearsing with our band, and a lot of ideas came together. And then one day, I was living in the basement of my parents' house, and the only radio station I could get was in New York, the oldie station, CBS FM. And I liked all of these kind of like old doo-wop chord changes. They're very classic 1950s. And to me, Billy's always had one foot in the Elvis school, the kind of classic rock, He loves all that kind of Otis Redding and Elvis, and obviously Johnny Burnett and all. He loves rockabilly and all that stuff. Classic rock, way back classic rock. So I had these chord changes. I'm just playing them, and he goes, "Oh, what's that?" And I said, "Well, it's just something I'm messing with." And luckily enough, he had some lyrics. He was always writing lyrics on a legal pad, and he had some lyrics, and they fit together well. But we really didn't know what we had. We knew we had something different than everything else we had done. But once we started, all props to our producer, Keith Forsey, who believed in it and said, look, Billy Idol records are not just one kind of music. We all grew up on the Beatles records, which had, from one song to the next, they were so different. One would sound like an Indian raga or something, and then one would be a classic song or something.
Oh yeah.
And so we said, with this record, if it sounds good, let's just pursue our ideas. And at the end of the day, if it sounds good, then it is good. So it was undeniable by the time that we had finished it. It had grown into this kind of creation, with the middle section rocking out a bit, because we said, it can't just be a ballad all the way through. Let's do something in the middle where there's electric guitars. And it just, it was kind of paint by numbers, but it really did work.
Yeah, no, I love that record. The Rebel Yell song is great. And then you did the Whiplash Smile record. And then it was around the same time that this is how you started doing the soundtrack stuff. You did the Top Gun anthem for the film, obviously the same name, with Harold Faltermeyer from who did Beverly Hills Cop. What was it like working with him?
Fantastic. I mean, it's a great example of you in my business, somebody asks you to do something, just always say yes. So,
and Billy was okay with you. Like, how does that work? Because you're contractually obligated to him, right? Or how does that? No, he let you.
We don't have any contracts or any of that stuff. Yeah. But Harold was the keyboard player on Whiplash Smile. He was friends with Keith Forsey, and he after one of the sessions, he mentioned to me, "Oh, I'm working on this movie. Maybe you'd be interested in playing on it." And he put up the multi-track after one of the Billy Idol sessions. It was on a weekend. And I think we spent about 2 hours in the whole thing, and it was wrapped up. And I kind of forgot about it, and then the movie came out and premiered and was a big deal. I went, "Oh, wow, this is," and then the soundtrack, of course, Take My Breath Away and Mighty Wings with Cheap Trick and Danger Zone. This was a huge record.
Oh, yeah.
And then I got a call from Harold he was living in Germany, and he said, "We got it nominated for a Grammy." And I go, "Get the fuck out of here." And he goes, "We're going to win." I go, "Yeah, okay." I said, "It's very nice to be nominated, but we did end up winning." And
so cool.
And like I say, man, you never know. You just never know.
Yeah, no. And so then a couple years later, you end up working with Michael Jackson. So this story is kind of interesting because you talk about how, like, when you recorded the song in the studio, it was pretty normal. Like, you walk in, it was just Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones, and very low key, similar to Billy Idol. But the interesting part to me was when you said you worked on the video for the song Dirty Diana, and you came out to the video shoot and there was like toys everywhere. And you thought, I was like, "Oh, someone's kid's here." But it was actually for like his pet chimp, Bubbles. Or is that one of the weirdest things that you've seen in the music business? Or
probably the weirdest.
Okay. Did the chimp even show up at that point though?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It was so we pull up, it's a van, tricked out van.
Yeah.
Flames on the side, and it was kind of open, and there was like a little jungle gym out there. And I thought, wow, they've got stuff set up for people's kids, keep them occupied. No, it was Bubbles. It was the Bubbles mobile.
Were you I'd be nervous of I mean, I guess it's domesticated animal, but I mean, I've heard stories of like chimps biting people's faces off and things like that. Like,
well, I didn't think of that, but so Michael has Bubbles in his, he brings him over to meet me. He goes, "Oh, do you want to meet Bubbles?" I go, "Yeah, of course." And, I don't know if you remember, but Michael used to wear like tape on his fingers when he held the microphone to,
Oh, I didn't know
some
that.
singers back then used to
Oh,
wear this
okay.
kind of like tape. So it kind of was, like a rock and roll thing. And Bubbles had the tape on. So Michael goes, "Oh, Bubbles has his rock tape on."
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, he's an interesting guy. Interesting guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, guys, you work with so many interesting people. Robert Palmer, you got to record with him as well, right? You guys did a song together?
I did three songs with Robert. Robert was the first rock star I ever met. So as I mentioned, the band before Idol, we went down to the Bahamas to Compass Point, and Robert was living across the street, and walked into the studio one night with a martini glass, exactly the way you'd expect Robert Palmer.
Would he have a
dressed
suit on and everything, or?
Yeah, he looked great. He looked exactly,
That's
the
funny.
hair's perfect, and
Yeah.
And he walked in and said, "Hello, I'm Robert," and carry on. And we were recording, or we were listening back or something, and he said, "Oh, who's the guitarist?" And I raised my hand. That would be me. And he literally lived across the street. Said he was working on some demos. Would I be interested in coming help out with some demos? So we struck up a friendship.
Oh,
And this
nice.
is a couple of years before Idol, or
Yeah.
at least a year and a half. So we always stayed in touch. And actually, the guitarist that played on things like "Addicted to Love" is a guy named Eddie Martinez, who was a friend of mine. I knew all the guys in Robert's band and stuff, and so I worked on the follow-up record. And he was living in Italy at the time, and we recorded in Italy.
That's fun.
He was a great guy. I mean, he really was exactly the way he was in those videos. He was very cool, and he was like the James Bond.
Did he have like girls all around him at the time too, all the time?
No, but when we did the video, we did.
Of course, yeah, okay.
We did the video, and we did it down on 14th Street, and it was all fashion models in the video. That was his thing, and,
right?
It's exactly what I expected.
Yeah. So what about, this is where I think I really became a fan of yours, was with the Vince Neil record, which I think a lot of people have told you that's one of the favorite records that you've done. But that's kind of like, I think I knew Billy Idol, but I guess I just didn't really know, that was when I started getting into rock, and I got that album, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. Cause I was a big Crew fan, of course.
Right.
And, they said part of the reason that Vince left the Crew or quit or fired or whatever is he didn't do enough songwriting. So did you do most of the songwriting on that record? Cause I know that was the first time you were able to actually write lyrics and stuff like that. Or did you guys work together, or was it?
I didn't. I think maybe I contributed lyrics only on one song on that record, which was "Can't Have Your Cake and Eat It Too."
Oh, I love that song. It's so
also,
good.
"Living is a Luxury." So that was the other one. But I came into the band. The band was, I got a call once again. I'm signed to Warner Brothers, and then Vince gets signed, and so my A&R guy, who was Ted Templeman, who was the producer of Van Halen, called. I was still living in New York, and said, "We've signed Vince Neil. Would you be interested in coming out?" And this was obviously after Dr. Feelgood, which I thought was just one of the best '80s rock records, hands down. I loved anything Bob Rock did. Anyway.
Oh yeah.
So all those records he did, The Cult, and all that stuff. Those Bob Rock records were state of the art. So I came out, and I said, yeah, there was other writers involved, Jack Blades and Tommy Shaw from Damn Yankees, and the producer was Ron Neverson, who had done Heart Records. So it was all, doing the record and everything was fantastic.
Yeah. And then, so what happened with that band? Like, there's all these stories that I read on, I don't know if you were even there for some of this, like Robbie Crane left, the bass player left because he got in a fist fight with Vince, and then Vicky Fox was kicked out because he stole equipment. Like, were you there for any of this stuff, or was this after you?
I was gone. I was gone before that.
Okay.
I guess I saw the writing on the wall, but, I mean, the record, I think more people appreciate the record now than when it was released, because this is right when grunge hit, Nirvana, and the record companies, although they spent a lot of money on signing Vince and promoting the record, record companies, by and large, they're looking for the next. They want another Nirvana or Pearl Jam or this and that. And I remember we were doing something, and they said, "Hey, you guys think about wearing flannel shirts, or?" And I went, "You signed Vince Neil, like the dude represents everything about Hollywood debauchery, and that's what Motley Crue's about. And you want him to wear a flannel shirt, and I go, it doesn't make sense." So I kind of, we had toured with Van Halen. We supported Van Halen, and that tour was already booked before we finished the record. So that was a big selling point for me to join. And once we finished that, it was very hard for, even somebody who had an audience like Vince did. We started playing smaller venues and things like that, and the press was not about what we were doing. So, so I kind of said, I need to reassess what I'm doing.
So touring with Van Halen, was that, I had the guitarist from Ugly Kid Joe, who they also toured with Van Halen. He said it was so weird. Like he walked into the dressing room and Eddie Van Halen's in like his tighty whities, like playing the guitar and stuff. And he said it was just like, was that surreal for you too? Or you already met him at this point?
I was already friends with Eddie, and nice. And they were at the, this was the album, not sure the name of the album, but it had a Pound Cake on it. And
For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge.
Is that the album? Yeah. And those guys would just every night, they'd come out with like storming. They were just brilliant every night. Ed and I were friends, and I think he was pretty damn sober on that tour. It was like it was a good tour to be on. They drank, and Sammy drank and all that, but you could tell that they were really proud of that record, and every night they were just unbelievable.
That's great. Yeah, no, I love that record too. Yeah, but I love that Vince Neil record that you guys made. I mean, I like his other one too, but like that first one, Exposed, I mean, it was so good. So do you hear that a lot from fans, that they really wish that you and Vince would do another record together? Or
I don't hear that, but a lot of guitar players say that's a really, that's a record that they really listen to and emulate. Because the '80s were like. There was a lot of good guitar players that were doing heavy rock guitar stuff in the '80s. In the '90s, it was like you couldn't get arrested doing that stuff.
Right, yeah.
But it's kind of come around full circle. And now you go on YouTube, and there's some 14-year-old kid playing Dokken or something, and it's like it's cool to shred again, in a different way. But I think younger guitar players really appreciate the technical ability of the '80s guitar players.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see, because there's a lot of those like 70s kind of sounding bands like Greta Van Fleet and the Struts, they kind of sound like Queen. It's kind of this revival of the 70s. I'd be curious to see if there's any sort of 80s revival type bands. That'd be fun.
The funny thing is that the 80s sound, I think, is more absorbed into like things like pop music.
Dance.
Even things like Miley Cyrus is citing a lot. She just did a duet with Billy Idol, and she's utilizing a lot of '80s songs and structures and things like that.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. You've done so many other cool projects, like the Kings. Are you still doing the Kings of Chaos every now and then, or is that thing?
We do, yeah. I mean, obviously with COVID, we're kind of we're on hiatus a little bit, but we were actually scheduled to do a Kings show, and but got canceled.
Yeah, so it's Matt Sorum from Guns N' Roses and the Cult, Billy Duffy from the Cult, Joe Elliott of Def Leppard has been in there, the DeLeo brothers from Stone Temple Pilots, Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top, which you said was really fun to play with him. Is there ever talk of doing like an original song with that band, or is it only mostly just live?
Yeah, there is actually. Yeah. Matt and I have talked about doing something, and there's actually some songs that are being floated about. So, but a lot of our plans kind of got waylaid.
Yeah.
But I think at some point there'll be some original stuff to come out of, because it's a damn Rolodex of who's who in rock and roll that you can call upon to do different tracks, and it's really interesting when you. I'm a huge fan of Stone Temple Pilots, and when I get to work with the DeLeo brothers, and being on stage with them and Billy Gibbons and Matt Sorum, it sounds incredible up there.
Yeah. Does Sebastian Bach, did he play with them sometimes too?
Yep.
Yeah. So tell me about that. You wrote and played with him. You did 3 songs on that Give 'Em Hell song, 2014. I love those songs. Right. I love that album. I love Sebastian Bach. I'm a huge Skid Row fan. So what's it like working with Sebastian? Like, he's a little bit of a character. Like, give me any good Sebastian Bach stories? I love a good Sebastian Bach story.
So I didn't, I only knew him from, he had guested on a Kings of Chaos show. Mm-hmm. So I got booked. This is my best Sebastian story. So I got booked to play the Iridium, which is a small club in New York. And it was where Les Paul used to play his weekly show. And they kept that night going. It's a Tuesday night. And they would invite guitar players to kind of be the guest guitar player with some of the original Les Paul players. And it was like you take over the night. So I agreed to do it. And so I call up Sebastian. I go, hey, man, I'm going to New York. I'm going to do this thing at the Iridium. Would you like to be the singer? Sure, man. Sounds great. All right, cool. And we get there, and I didn't realize it's a small place, but it's like dinner theater. People are sitting at tables eating dinner while they're watching you, right?
Okay.
And I'm like, oh shit, because that's a different vibe, man. And I'm thinking, Sebastian Bach, he's like playing to the garden. Every night, that's his mindset. And I'm thinking, oh man, this ain't going to go down well with him. Well, fortunately enough, so he was such a good sport about it. I go before we go on. I go, Sebastian, just to let you know, they're going to be eating dinner. Just eating dinner? What the fuck is that? I go, it's like a club where they eat dinner, I go, eat dinner while I'm on stage singing? I go, it is what it is. So we're up there. And so he climbs off the stage and he walks across the tables and somebody's like eating chicken. So he's like picking up the chicken and he's like, oh yeah, that's some good chicken, man. And he was such a good sport about it. The audience loved it, but he was still giving him shit about eating while he was performing.
That is a weird setup for a rock show. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's that. The only other place I've played like that is there was the legendary place in New York called the Bottom Line, and everyone played the Bottom Line, Springsteen, and I played there with Billy Idol, and they serve food. It's like, but we were doing. It was part of our Unplugged tour, so it kind of worked.
That makes sense for Unplugged. But Sebastian Bach, right. I can't picture that.
He's not the dinner theater guy.
No. But he did do the musicals, but even that's like more elaborate. Yeah. So, and then you got so many projects here. The Deadland Ritual band. This is like an all-star band. You got Frankie Perez on vocals, Geezer Butler from Black Sabbath on bass, and Matt Sorum on drums, and of course yourself on guitars. Tell me about that band.
Yeah, we just it was one of those, Matt and I knew, we were friends with Frankie, and we were just like, oh, let's put something together. I was kind of on a break. Billy Idol wasn't touring for a little while. And let's put this together. Matt and I spoke, and we were thinking about bass players. And I guess Matt had just seen an interview with Geezer after Sabbath played their last show in Birmingham. And he picked up the phone and said, hey, would be into jamming. And that's the way it starts. It's no different.
Well, how does he get Geezer Butler's phone number though? Just because
Matt has everybody's phone number.
Oh, because he's from Guns N' Roses? He's like, he can just get anybody. It's different.
He's that guy.
Really?
He's that guy. He's got everybody's number.
Do you ever get calls like that from like just random celebrities that are famous, and you're not mad because it's like somebody, like if Mick Jagger ever call you or somebody crazy like that, you're like, you don't even ask how they got your phone number?
I had in the 80s, I had the ultimate Mick Jagger phone message, and he left a message on my answering machine, and he said he was doing a solo tour in Australia, and he said, yeah, hello, Steve, it's Mick Jagger. I'm here down in wherever it was, Martinique, down in the Caribbean, and I'm going to do this tour. I thought and but it was undeniably him. I didn't end up doing it. I think Satriani did the tour because I didn't think I was the guy to play Rolling Stone. You know, obviously he's got to play Rolling Stone stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm just not that guy.
It's definitely a different sound for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I love Keith Richards, but I don't play anything like that. So, and I just, I turned down Mick Jagger.
That's pretty crazy though. Yeah. That's nice that he thought of you though. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then did you do a song with Ozzy? I don't think it's come out yet, but you guys wrote some songs or something with Billy Morrison?
Yeah, well, Ozzy's best friend is Billy Morrison, who's Idol's second guitar player, rhythm guitar player, who's like one of my closest buddies. And I think this has got to be 2 years ago. He said that Ozzy was looking. They had put together some ideas, and Morrison knew that I had a home studio, and said, "Would you be willing to let Ozzy come in and cut a couple of songs?" And I think we did like 3 songs, and but nothing really came of it. It was I think it was more. He was just finding his direction, you know. It was. I mean, it was unbelievable to have him in this. He literally stood right there and sang. And
this was Ozzy in person. It wasn't like via like a.
Oh no, he came here and was, he'd bring his lunch and sit down.
What does Ozzy Osbourne eat for lunch? That's the burning question on everyone's mind.
What was it? Because he left his Tupperware here, I remember.
You should sell that on eBay.
I have Ozzy's Tupperware.
That's an eBay item for sure. Yeah, wow. That's cool.
But I don't know, salad or something.
Just something normal.
Seemed like a pretty healthy guy.
I'm sure, yeah, now. Maybe not back in the 80s, but yeah. So then...
But he was great.
That's cool.
He's a lovely guy. I mean, he really is.
That's what I've heard from everybody, yeah. Yeah, and I had his bass player on here, Blasco. He was really nice. He was telling, how great it was working with Ozzy. So
yeah.
And then you have a solo record that you're going to have guest vocalists. And can you not say who the vocalists are? Or can you hint, or can we guess? Because is it people you've worked with in the past, or people you haven't worked with, or a mix?
I mean, there might be a mixture of both, but I think my thing is that I'm such a fan of singers, and I've been blessed that I've worked with so many good singers.
Amazing.
I mean, and that was one of the best aspects about my career in the 80s, because I wasn't a band member per se. I was Billy Idol's sideman. So people figured, oh, well, we can just call him and, have him come in and do things like a Rick Ocasek so I really did get to do a lot of, writing and playing with people that I think ordinarily guys that are in bands, they just play with their band and record with their band. So, but I love the juxtaposition of working with people maybe outside of my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of cool singers that I'd like to work with, but some rock, maybe some that aren't rock. I'm a fan of songs, and I certainly don't want to do a record that's a shred guitar thing. We have so many guys that are great at that, and that's their thing. But for me, I want to do a record of great songs and innovative guitar. And if there's a solo, great. If there's not, it's still a great song.
So what would be a comparison then? Like, is it going to just be a mix, like kind of like a diverse, eclectic mix of different kinds of songs?
Yeah, and I might try and conceptualize it. I mean, I'm a guy that grew up on those early 70s rock records where they had a bit of a theme. I wouldn't go so far as to say I'm going to do a prog rock record, but I love albums that, have something, some tether that holds the songs together. And I think there has to be that if I'm going to have different singers on it. But I thought, best example of that was the Santana record, which,
that's a good one.
And certainly some of Carlos's best guitar playing is on that record. But,
it's got the Rob Thomas
in there, yeah. So, I mean, I'd love to just work with different people outside of what people ordinarily expect. There's no shame in trying something, and I've done this long enough to know when it's working and maybe when it's not.
Yeah. So do you have some of those things lined up, or are you still looking to get guest vocalists?
I've just started to like put the word out, and I'm still writing. So that's the other aspect of it is as I write a tune, I'm hearing in my head, oh, who would be good for this?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, this person or that person. And,
Mick Jagger, maybe this is the time you guys work together. Do a song. Why not?
yeah.
Or Axl.
After what I just said about turning down the gig, and be like, fuck off.
And then, so you also have, is this a separate thing that you're doing, the flamenco record? And that they have a band with that. That's Frankie Perez on vocals on that one too, right?
No, I had already done a flamenco record, Flamenco a Go-Go, but I did that actually after the Vince Neil thing.
Yeah.
I was kind of burnt out on the heavy rock thing.
Sure.
And flamenco was one of the styles that I started with. So it was a way for me to reconnect with why I picked the damn instrument up to begin with. So I did a flamenco record, but I still do. There's a guitarist named Ben Woods, if anybody wants to Google and look on YouTube. And he's a real deal flamenco guitarist, but he's a rock and roll guy. So he and I work together really well. So I'm sure that there'll be aspects of that on my next solo record.
Right.
Because it's a big part of what I do. And I remember we toured with, last summer we toured with Bryan Adams. And there's a Bryan Adams song called When a Man from Don Juan DeMarco, the film, the Johnny Depp film. And it's flamenco guitar on it. And Bryan wasn't performing it live. I said, why don't you do that? A man loves a woman. Why don't you do that live? He goes, oh, well, we don't really have the flamenco guitar, and I'll do it. So and I love, that's a perfect example of a guy with a great rock and roll voice. And then he does this, he had a guitarist named Paco de Lucia who passed away. Paco was the Jimi Hendrix of flamenco guitar. And I was a fan of both of those. When I heard those two guys together, I'd like to do something I'd like to at least have a beautiful ballad, a Spanish ballad on the record like that.
Oh, that's cool. I look forward to that. And then also you have a new record coming out maybe with Billy Idol. Are you guys working on or writing it, or what's the stage on that?
Yeah, we're continuing to write, and we did some tracks with Butch Walker, who I had wanted to work with for quite a while. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, he works with a lot of people.
And it was just Billy, myself, and Butch. Butch plays every instrument and played some second guitar and bass on it. It was really like we just formed this little trio to write and record these tunes. And I think they're the strongest Billy Idol stuff in a long time.
Well, yeah, it's amazing because I know musicians don't like Spotify, but like I think I had not heard the last two Billy Idol records, and so I listened to them and I was like, there's some really good songs on here, especially the I always forget the names of I think it was the last single on Kings and Queens of the Underground, and it's really catchy. It's like, and I'm like, gosh, why aren't these songs on the, and like makes me so angry that like sometimes when I hear good music like that, I'm like, why am I just now hearing this? So people should definitely check that out.
It's because Billy's, he's classic rock now, so the classic rock stations. They'll play Rebel Yell and White Wedding and Eyes Without a Face, but it's very hard to get them to crack new music. They have their format. It's great that they play that stuff, and I receive royalties from it, but we're still making music and we still are, hopefully valid.
Yeah. And the songs sound good. The production sounds good. Like you guys sound like on top of your game. So that's why it's so like got to be frustrating.
Well, the last record was produced by Trevor Horn. So of course it's going to sound pretty damn good, but we just, it's what we do, man. I mean, it's not, it's just, we love making music and we love working together, and we just continue to do it, and we continue to do it with new people, so it's fresh. Yeah,
no, I love it. And I mean, gosh, so many people that you worked with. I know you said the Mick Jagger thing, that was one that you backed out on. Is there other projects or like big gigs like that you were offered that you almost had or that you wanted that you backed out of, or it didn't work out for one reason or another?
The only thing, and people probably know that I was approached by David Lee Roth when he left Van Halen, and that he flew to New York. We met up, but I was right in the midst of the third Billy Idol record, Whiplash Smile, and I couldn't, I had already committed to the album and committed to touring, and I wasn't just going to pack up and go, halfway through the record. All right, see, I'm going to work with this guy, and I don't think I would have been the right guy. I think Steve Vai was perfect for that. And I actually, once they got Steve, they recorded. Templeman was a producer. They recorded in New York, and I met with Steve, and we hung out, and then I loaned him a bunch of guitar amps for the recording. And
that's right.
Because guitar players, man, we're very unique knuckleheads. We're like, a lot of us are socially awkward, and because if you take a kid and you put and he wants to be in a room and not out playing football or basketball, and he wants to be in a room with this instrument for 4 hours of it at a day, you gotta kind of be a weirdo,
right,
to do that, and to eschew a social life with your friends. Because I had a lot of friends when I was a kid who would be like, hey, let's go out here and let's do, no, I'm playing my guitar. Or a new Zeppelin record would come out, and I'd have to learn every song, because that's what you did. I was such a fan that I couldn't wait. I'd buy 2 copies of the record because I knew I was going to ruin one because of the needle going on, and having to replay it, and I'd scratch the shit out of it. So it's you're going to be a weird kid to do that.
That's interesting. Yeah, it is. Some of the musicians I've interviewed, they seem like they're almost more of like introverts. Like it's kind of interesting because you don't think that when they're on stage and they're so flamboyant. But yeah, I mean,
guitar players, I think guitar players in general, there's always exceptions to the rule. But I remember when I saw, dating myself here. So in 1968, Elvis had his comeback special, and it was a big deal. It was in color on TV. Family had just recently got a color TV. So we're watching it. And of course, my mom and my aunt are looking at Elvis, and they're like, oh, he's so great and so good looking. And me and my dad never played an instrument, but he loved music. And we're looking at Elvis guitar player, Scotty Moore. And I'm like, Scotty's the guy behind. And I'm like, I want to be like that guy. And I think, all of my heroes were, Jimmy Page had this sense of mystery. Tony Iommi's sense of mystery. We're not the guy in the front, the ringleader. We're the guy, but we're more like directors, really, kind of like, working on the script and making sure all of this works together. And I think a lot of guitar players have that personality.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's always exceptions.
Well, one exception I would say is Slash. He's definitely stands out. Tell me the story about how the first time you met him at the Rainbow. That was kind of an interesting, I heard you telling the story on another show.
Yeah, Slash is actually a pretty shy guy, though. He's certainly not a loudmouth. I mean, when he's on stage, that's where we let it out.
He has the character, because I think because his hat and just the way he plays, I can see him being shy. Yeah. That's interesting.
So, I remember there'd always be in particular, I won't name the name, but there was a musician who I was a huge fan of, and it was disappointing to meet them because they were maybe they just had a bad day or whatever, but it kind of blew me off. And when I said, oh, I love this record, and I love, how did you come up with this? And so evidently when I did meet Slash, I wasn't aware I had met him before. So he was in Velvet Revolver by this time, and he's rehearsing, and we, they had won the Grammy, and all of us rockers were really glad for that band, because it was the one rock band that was on the charts and selling records, that was still had a classic rock sound. And I think he's one of the best emissaries he's a great ambassador for guitar, and he's a perfect example of a guy who has the technical ability, but also loves being in a band and working with a singer. And he's got, you can tell Slash in 3 notes. And I think that's the real test. So I saw him and I said, hey, it's great to meet you. Congratulations on the Grammy. And he goes, we met before. said, really? I don't remember. He goes, yeah, you kind of blew me off at the Rainbow. I go, when was this? He goes, yeah, I was still in high school or something, or just out of high school. And I guess he was just some kid, just
Yeah.
like, yeah. And I was like, I go, I apologize, man. I go, I really apologize. That's not me. Maybe I was, preoccupied or something. He was a good sport about it, but I didn't remember it at all.
Yeah. Have you ever had the opposite effect where, like, let's say a fan reaches out to you and, tells you like, hey, you saved my life. Like either, your music or, they found inspiration from your guitar playing, it helped propel them forward or things like that.
Yeah, I mean, now when before COVID, we were doing meet and greets,
Oh.
Billy and I really love doing our meet and greets because we've got a long, our relationship for these fans has outlasted some of their parents, or they remember the first time that they brought home Rebel Yell and their parent, maybe their dad was still, shut that shit off, and maybe their dad's passed away and they come see us and they remember all this stuff. And, now some of them have kids and they're turning it off. So for us, there's been we like doing meet and greets because for some reason, Billy Idol fans, it's a lot of them, it's a special connection to the music. And when you meet somebody who says, well, they battled, cancer, and listening to the music helped them through chemo or radiation, or, and it gave them inspiration, and, Eyes Without a Face, they got married to it or something. I mean, that's such a payoff for us. And we get a lot of those fans, and it really does mean something beyond just playing music.
No, that's super cool. I'm curious, like, why do you think that you made it? I mean, because I would say you've made it. I mean, you're Billy. I mean, won a Grammy, so much success, all these amazing musicians you've worked with. Like, why do you think you made it and others don't? Because I feel like there's a lot of people who drop out of school to play in a rock band and they don't have the same happy ending that you do. So what do you think sets you apart? Is it just strictly talent, or is it hard work, or a combination, or?
There was a lot of great guitar players that I was maybe friends with in my neighborhood, and local hero guitar players that never became successful or whatever. I think a lot of it is being humble, and allowing, I don't know, taking direction and being a fan of and respecting the other person or people that you work with. You've got to have that. And if that's why bands break up, because they lose respect for each other, and then it becomes about the money and there's fighting and this and that. I think one of the reasons it's always worked with Billy is because he really, he does have the final say. Now I'm his partner and we write together and all that, but it's a Billy Idol record at the end of the day. And we always have a joke, like if I came up with a part and, or if there was a guitar solo that wasn't appropriate, or he'd always go, save it for your own record, and I'd be like, okay,
Yeah.
And also, he knows I'm not going to bullshit him. I'm not going to, he knows by now that, if it's a good musical idea or what we're collaborating on, I'm not going to blow smoke up the guy's butt. That's pointless. He doesn't need me for that. So I think honesty, you have to have people skills. You have to sometimes be humble and also understand what it is that the other person that you're working with is looking for,
That's interesting. Yeah, you also had an interesting quote. So I don't know if people know your story, but you used to have addiction, typical rock star story, went through the, party lifestyle too hard, and then you got sober. But it was an interesting, you said or actually this wasn't your quote. A quote that you heard was people at a meeting had said that someone had said this: drinking the poison, and when drinking alcohol, I'm assuming they're talking about drinking the poison and expecting the other person to die. That's a really interesting quote about alcohol.
Well, yeah, it pertains to it, a lot of people and I'm not like a staunch AA person or anything. It just,
Yeah.
when something ceases to work for you in the 80s, we went from playing tiny little clubs at the beginning of Rebel Yell to playing arenas and, playing to 20,000 people a night, and that adrenaline rush. And the fact that you're selling records and you're becoming this, this hugely successful thing, that adrenaline rush on stage for 2.5 hours was so intense that when you immediately got on a tour bus to take that 7-hour ride, it was painful to crash like that. You're up here. And so we found that alcohol and Coke enabled you to keep that. And kind of for a while, it worked to come in for a landing by the time you got to the hotel. And then you could crash, wake up and do the sound check and do the whole thing again. Eventually it doesn't work.
Right.
But it was to avoid that the emotional and a physical crash that, now we're much better at dealing with things like that, but we didn't have any of those tools. And also everyone in the business did drugs. And, you go into an A&R meeting with the label and they chop out lines and stuff. It really, it was like that.
So crazy. So how do you deal with it now? How do you deal with a crash now? You said you're better at, what do you do? You meditate or something? Or?
No, first of all, my wife travels with me. When we met, we've been together 18 years now, and one of the things that happens is you travel the world, and you, as a musician, you never get to see anything.
Right.
You see the hotel room and the dressing room, and my wife just has the kind of personality. She can hang with the other band members, and she comes and helps with the meet and greet and the wardrobe and all. She's like she really is one of the crew when she comes out. And she'll do whatever. Everybody loves her, and it's not for every spouse because you don't want a Yoko Ono around, but for us it works. And she's really a team player. And also, you just get to a point where you just, time to grow up. And you have to find. You're never going to play and perform as good as you are sober. You might think it's really good when you're stoned, but it's not. You listen back to it and go, shit, didn't sound that way in my head.
Right. But you usually do the stuff after the show, right? Or were you guys?
Yeah, for me, I couldn't play high. I've never recorded high. I mean, if people go, yeah, sure. No, I've never, because I couldn't. I was useless. So it just didn't. I'd wait till afterwards or whatever. But I mean, as you mature, you gain a respect for your songs. You gain a respect for the guys on stage for you. You don't want to let them down. You don't want the audience to be the one saying, yeah, I saw him at 85. In 85, he was so much better. I want them to go, wow, those guys are better than they've ever been. And we try and do that every night.
So, and you still get the adrenaline going from it too, right?
You do. That never goes away.
That's awesome.
If I'm not a little nervous before I go on, something's wrong.
Oh, I mean, so you actually get a little nervous, huh? It's almost like
it's a little bit of that adrenaline and nerves, especially I would say when we do like a festival gig, because there's a lot of other bands on it, and you want to kind of be the one to go, yeah, well, we've got Rebel Yell and Dancing with Myself, because that's like your secret weapon,
right.
having those tunes. Some guitar player may get up there and play the most incredible solo or whatever, but like Aerosmith, when they get on stage and they have those songs, or Kiss or whatever, without those songs, it's like that's the secret weapon,
Yeah, because everybody
Billy and I always say that, our best special effect, we don't have pyro or anything. Our best special effect is our chemistry on stage. Just hopefully like Mick and Keith or any of those great duos.
Yeah, I've never seen you guys live. I really want to. Hopefully you'll come to Phoenix when this whole thing is over with, the COVID and pandemic and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you've done some charity gigs. So you work with a lot of charities: Rock to Recovery, Music Cares, Adopt the Arts, National Independent Venue Association, Save Our Stages, and you work with the veterans as well.
Yeah, we've done, of course, yeah, we've done stuff for Wounded Warriors. And I did actually, Matt and I did a song with a guy. I wish I remembered his name, but he's a wounded warrior who played guitar and sang, kind of a country artist. And they said, "Would you do something to raise money?" Because actually, he had PTSD,
Hmm.
and Gene and Paul from Kiss actually helped him and his wife get a house. This is not this is the stuff that people don't hear about, but they raised money for the guy without people knowing.
Wow.
And Matt and I met him, and we said, "Well, why don't we do a song with you?" And the guy was like, "What?" I said, "Well, you're not going to come in the studio and just sit on your ass. We're going to put you to work." So we did this. We did a song with the guy. He's kind of a country artist. Mark something or other. I forgot his name. So we did that, and then percentage of I have a signature guitar with Nags guitars, and the percentage goes to Music Cares, a small percentage, and also I have a guitar pedal with a company called J Rocket, and 20% of all of J Rocket's proceeds go to Children's Cancer Fund. So it doesn't take too much to like work out a deal where a little bit of percentage of something is going to go to help people. And
Yeah, that's super cool.
it's not real. It doesn't take a lot of effort to do that stuff.
Have you ever played the Top Gun theme like on an aircraft carrier for the Air Force?
Not for the Air Force, but we did the video. I was on top of a plane. I've kind of done that twice. Not I don't like heights. So I was like, I'm not doing that again.
That would just be, I think that'd be a good morale boost to the troops. Or if they just like all of a sudden you came out from under the floor playing the guitar and playing that song.
I'd love to do it.
That'd be fun. That'd be awesome.
There's a Top Gun 2 that's supposed to come out.
Yeah. Are you part of that?
Yeah. Well, I think they're using they've gone in and used the master takes from the original. So I'm more than willing to do the aircraft for them.
That's cool. And then, so you have a new website, stevestevensguitar.com, where people can buy merch. I want to buy one of those ray guns. They're only like $25 because you do the ray gun sound and you can actually buy just the ray gun, which I would probably just get the regular one, but you could also buy the one that's like made to actually play on the guitar. Like you've re-engineered it or something. Right?
Yeah. People would always ask me about it. And I had one, and actually I owned one because these were the kind that I use. I go in and doctor. They were made in the 70s, and there's a certain kind. You have to have the speaker on the right kind, all this kind of stuff. So I had one, and some girl stole it off the stage at Brixton Academy in England. And we put the word out through the road crew, and she returned it.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, she didn't have a choice.
That's good.
And so what happened was, people would ask me in their email or whatever and say, "Hey man, how do I get one of these?" And I'd say, they're not that easily available. Well, I came across 25 of them that were brand new from the 70s. So I doctored them and I made them available off night. They sold out in one day. It's crazy.
So those ones are, but the other ones are for the cheaper ones are like $25 ones are still there then.
Yeah. They're just like things that'll sign.
Yeah. That's cool. And then you do Cameo. You're on Cameo. If people want to, you don't necessarily give a lesson over Cameo, but if there's like a specific lick that somebody wants to have help from you, you can show them that, or just say happy birthday or something, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't, none of that stuff is sacred to me. If they have it's not a guitar lesson, but if they have I get a mixture. Some people want, a happy birthday greeting or something, or, whatever. But a lot of, people write in and say, that, the first part of such and such song, or, the solo in this, I can't figure out how to do it. And I'll show them, I enjoy passing on whatever knowledge I have.
That's cool. And you're on Twitter now. Your manager tells me.
I'm on Twitter. Yeah. I resisted for years.
Or it's kind of like, to me, Twitter feels like a minefield. Like, I don't know. I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I just step into? Like, do you feel the same way, or you just go on and post your stuff and then get out?
Well, anything that I'm involved in, my wife is usually involved in it. She's got over 1 million followers online, and
she has 1 million now on Twitter.
Between Twitter and Facebook and all that kind of, I guess, accumulatively, she has an audience of 1 million, over 1 million, And she's really active in that in social media. She gets it more than I do. So anytime I would do something, she would post it and say, "Oh, check out Steve's thing." So I kind of avoided Twitter, but now I like being able to tweet back. Some of my musician friends are on there, and
that's cool.
You know, if they're doing something, I go, "Yeah, you know, good luck to you," whatever. You know, I'm not like on there every day,
right?
But I check in.
Yeah. So what is your wife was on that Married to Rock? You guys actually got married on that show. Like, is she doing more reality TV, or I know she's making The Mask. What other projects does she have? You want to plug her stuff?
Yeah, she you know, we did that show, and it was actually a lot of fun to do. I had the easy job because I was on the road, and it was more about the wives, and you know, we were that show. They pitched the show to us because I was already friends with Billy Duffy and his girl, and Duff and Susan McKagan, and Perry Farrell. We were already friends. We were already doing shows together, Kings of Chaos or whatever it was. So it was just a matter of like a camera in the room to capture what was going on. And my wife is, you know, she's so larger than life. And she's the opposite of the introvert of me. You know, I think that's why it works, because she's really outgoing, and she's all personality anyway. She's perfect for TV. And,
does she want to do my show? Maybe I should have her on.
Oh man, she's she's much more interesting than I am. I will tell you.
No way, man. I'm telling you, this is surreal right now because, like I said, I had the Vince Neil CD. I remember I have it's like I could see the picture of you in it, and it was like I'm looking at all the song notes and that you wrote the songs, and like I loved that album. It really made me a fan. I've tried to follow your career since then. And then when you did Sebastian Bach's album too, I was like, oh my God, like he's working with all my like favorite singers. Like it's great. And of course I love Billy Idol too. And he's classic songs. So yeah, I hope I can see you guys live sometime. And then last thing I think I need to plug is this rock and roll fantasy camp that you're doing on October 11th. Or is that already filled out? It says 25 person max, I think.
No, I think that this is the second one I'm doing. First one we had to actually add people. We went way past 25. And I've done, it's an extension of the rock and roll fantasy camp where you actually go in person. You sign up and you're in a room, and I was curious how they were going to do this, but it's really cool. It's you know, everybody is on Zoom much like this, and they get to ask questions, and I get to share. You know, sometimes they'll ask me something I have never even thought about, and like I said, you know, man, when I was a 14-year-old kid, if I could have asked, you know, Jimmy Page or somebody a question about a song and had him show me, or some knowledge about you know, a lot of people, you know, ask about how do you get a guitar sound or recording, or so. Cool. I dig doing it. You know, it's like I said, if I can pass on some of this stuff going on in my head, you know, it's probably useful to somebody.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you. So I hope I didn't miss anything. There's anything else you want to plug at this point, or?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. I really appreciate it. It's surreal for me. So it was a lot of fun, and I'll try to get this up soon.
All right. My pleasure. Man.
Okay. Thanks, Steve.
Stay healthy.
So despite all my research, I've never heard that Sebastian Bach or Mick Jagger story. So many fun stories, just great advice from him. He's just such a humble and cool dude. You know, it's fun to chat with him. And again, very surreal to me because I grew up such a fan. You know, I want to thank Steve for coming on, and I want to thank his manager, Kent, for having the patience to set this up. Make sure you check out Steve's website, stevestevensguitar.com. And again, he's on Cameo, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Make sure to follow him so you'll get the updates on his upcoming record with Billy Idol, his solo record, and all the other work that he's doing, plus the Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp, his charity work, etc. So much things with him. But if you like this interview, you can support the show by following me on social media. Write me a nice review on iTunes, or you can just slip cash in my Venmo. Thanks for listening, and remember to shoot for the moon.